This video is sponsored by Squarespace. There's a new MacBook Air in the works with a new design, more ports, new colors, mini LED display, M2 processor, all in what may be one of the thinnest and lightest Mac designs ever. Yeah, the M2 MacBook Air sounds like it could be the perfect laptop. Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and if you're just as excited as I am for a completely redesigned MacBook Air, show your appreciation by hitting that like button, and don't forget, if you aren't subscribed already, hit the subscribe button because we have a lot to go over with this new rumored M2 MacBook Air, especially regarding some recent news and leaks surrounding this device, and why this might just be the best Apple Silicon Mac yet. First of all, we now have some further corroborating leaks from Dylan and KTN on Twitter, who says that the next MacBook Air will come with an M2 chip and feature multiple color options, just like the M1 iMac, and that this MacBook Air will be released sometime in early 2022. Now, while this random Twitter leaker might not sound like a reputable source, and a lot of Twitter leakers aren't, I looked into his track record, and this person actually seems to have a pretty decent reputation, and correctly guessed even some recent announcements like the M1 iMac, and the fact that the iPad Pro would have the M1 chip inside of it, when a lot of other people were saying it was going to have an A14X. So their track record with chip names and placements is actually pretty good, and it lines up with other sources like Jon Prosser, who said that a new colorful MacBook Air would be coming, and this seems to be the first time we're getting a second report on a new MacBook Air design featuring new colors. So I am so happy to hear this. I love the design of the MacBook Air, and at this point, it's a classic design in Apple's lineup. However, just like the M1 iMac received a pretty radical redesign, I think it's definitely time to shake up Apple's laptop lineup with the same amount of effort and make a laptop design that can truly only be made with the efficiency that Apple Silicon gives us. So that's what this M2 MacBook Air sounds like. So not only are we expecting this next generation of MacBook Airs to come in a bunch of new color options, we are also expecting it to have a slimmed down and lighter design while also being smaller in overall volume, because Apple is rumored to be keeping that 13-inch display size but reducing the bezel size around the device, meaning that that 13-inch display will fit into a smaller area. And to me, this sounds like a product that would sit somewhere between the now discontinued 12-inch MacBook and the size of the current M1 MacBook Air. So the current M1 MacBook Air weighs in at 2.8 pounds, so I think with all of these changes of a lighter and thinner M2 MacBook Air, I would probably guess the weight would be reduced to around 2.5 pounds, and while the overall design may become thinner, I don't think it will be radically thin like the 12-inch MacBook, because Apple would still need to fit in a full-size Magic Keyboard rather than the ultra-low profile butterfly keyboard. And we should also see a flatter design style. That would go along with the recent design direction of Apple's latest products, which may mean that if it lacks the taper design, it may not be as thin as the thinnest area of the current MacBook Air design, but the body as a whole will have greater uniform thinness. Of course, a lighter and thinner design isn't the only thing that we are expecting with this M2 MacBook Air. We are also expecting the return of the MagSafe charging port, just like the rumored 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro. Although at this point, we haven't heard about any other port options returning to the MacBook Air. So we haven't heard about, like an SD card slot or HDMI port coming to the MacBook Air. So at this point, I don't think it will have it, which is fine. I mean, if Apple puts MagSafe on the MacBook Air, that's enough of a port addition, and, this product is still being aimed at consumers, so ports like an SD card slot aren't as needed as they would be on the MacBook Pro, and of course you'll still have the Thunderbolt ports, so you could still choose to use adapters like you can on the current M1 MacBook Air. Perhaps one of the most surprising rumored additions to this MacBook Air is actually the display itself. So we heard quite a few rumors now going back to when Ming-Chi Kuo first said there would be a redesigned MacBook Air, and that this model would be including a higher end component, a mini LED display. That's the same display that is currently found on the recent 12.9-inch iPad Pro and will offer up to 1600 nits of peak brightness and give us a 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio, which gives us better black levels and the ability to view and edit HDR video. This high-cost component actually makes sense though when you figure that this future MacBook Air model, at least according to Mark Gurman, is supposed to be a premium model that will be sold alongside the entry-level M1 MacBook Air. So the M1 MacBook Air is going to stay in the lineup. They're going to put higher components into this redesigned MacBook Air, which should mean that we should expect this new M2 MacBook Air to have a higher starting price point, probably $100 or $200 on top of the current M1 MacBook Air, unless if Apple keeps the M1 MacBook Air in the lineup, maybe that gets a further price point cut to maybe starting around $899, and then that M2 MacBook Air could either start at $1,099 or probably more likely $1,199. Either way, there's going to be kind of two different offerings with a lower end MacBook Air and now a higher end MacBook Air. Now, there's another component we need to talk about, perhaps the most important one in this entire MacBook Air design. But before we do that, we need to talk about the best way to build a website with our sponsor for this video, Squarespace. Listen, if you need to build a website, there's only one service I know of that's going to be able to take you from a website concept in your head to a beautiful website in literally just a few hours. That's Squarespace. Squarespace makes it as easy as possible to get your website, blog, portfolio, restaurant, small business, or really anything you want up and running with literally zero experience or any experience in coding languages, with hundreds of beautiful customizable templates that are as easy to edit as clicking, typing, and dragging. That's all you need to do to start making your personal website built just for you, and it's how I made the website for my podcast, GadgetCast. Squarespace even offers a full-fledged e-commerce platform complete with online payments through Stripe, PayPal, and yes, even Apple Pay. So you can start accepting payments from major credit card companies with just a few clicks and manage store inventory through Squarespace's easy-to-use tools. Best of all, you can try it for yourself absolutely free by going to squarespace.com, and when you decide to launch your website, be sure to go to squarespace.com/GregsGadgets to save 10% off your first purchase, or just click the link in the description to get started on your own website. So listen, if you need to build a website, skip the hassle and check out Squarespace, and thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now, before I teased what will be the most important part of this next-gen MacBook Air, and that is, of course, Apple Silicon, because this MacBook Air is rumored to be the first Apple product to ship with the true next-generation M2 chip. Now, obviously, this will not be the M1X chip that is going to go into the MacBook Pros. Like I've told you before, the M2 chip will be weaker in multi-core and GPU performance, but considering it's the start of the next generation and based on the newer A15 chip, it will be more efficient and have higher clock speeds, meaning it will have higher single-core performance than even what the next MacBook Pros will have. So this means that we will likely retain the 8-core CPU design of the current M1 chip, just with higher clock CPUs. However, we have heard from a Bloomberg report that this next M2 chip will be getting a bump in GPU cores, with Mark Gurman saying that the next M2 chip would have a 9 and 10 core GPU design rather than the 7 and 8 core GPU options that the current M1 Air ships with. I think this boost in GPU performance, as well as a refined chip design, would mean that a lot of the limitations of the current M1 MacBook Air, like the inability to connect more than one external monitor at a time, I feel like that will be a thing of the past. And I would expect this M2 version of the MacBook Air to be able to pair up to multiple displays, a requested feature that the M1 just can't do right now. Now, while the M2 sounds like a good year-over-year upgrade, if you're asking why the MacBook Air isn't getting that souped-up M1X chip, and be on the same level as the MacBook Pros, it's because the MacBook Air has a different set of priorities than those pro-level computers, and it still needs to be focused on providing a balanced experience of being a thin and light laptop with good power, good battery life, and good thermals, all without needing a cooling fan. It's a product that's aimed at consumers who want the best possible MacBook in the thinnest and lightest form factor, but still offering some of those more premium features like the mini LED display. A lot of consumers want a good display, whether or not they necessarily want more power. Now, last year, the simple addition of the M1 chip into the existing design of the older Intel MacBook Air made what I thought was possibly the best laptop ever made. And the current M1 MacBook Air has remained the top Mac that I recommend to most users. This new M2 version of the MacBook Air sounds like it could be the perfect laptop because it will add on to the M1 MacBook Air with a lot of refinements, a better design, and even offering some of those premium features that may have swayed entry-level users to get the MacBook Pro. And I just can't wait to see what this thing finally looks like based on these rumors. It sounds awesome. And also, according to most of these rumors, it seems like when we'll actually see this MacBook Air is in the first half of 2022. So that's a little longer wait than the rumored MacBook Pros. Those are still supposed to come out by the end of 2021. So let me know, are you starting to get excited for this next version of the MacBook Air? And also let me know, what features are you excited for? And also, do you agree with me that this just sounds like the perfect laptop? Also, if you like this video, be sure to give me a like. If you want to see more from the channel, make sure you're subscribed, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.